Welcome. Today we have Brian with us. He has been a couple times on the podcast and he's back again. I consider Brian a good friend. He certainly has been there in times of need, personally, and I'm always fascinated to see his way to express the inexpressible. The three of us were on video, and this time I thought that podcast misses a beat without the visual component. And what made me think that was mainly because of Brian's expressive nature. For instance, when he talks about being, he usually finishes the sentence with silence, which on the audio might seem that he has been cut off, but it is not the case. And yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoy it, and see you next week. What have you been up to, Brian? If you want to share a bit of your last days with us, I always marvel in your descriptions, even if it's a simple thing. You really know how to transmit, how you pass your days.
It's been this. It's been very quiet.
Yeah, I can feel that. For me, it's we talked about this a bit with I talked about this with you, Brandon, in the last episode. There's there's this sense of intense stuff coming up, or old stuff coming up, and yesterday and today that's been like that on the surface. Like there's some bodily sensations which are pretty intense, and but there's uh just like we talked about, this infusion of these, and what was before unbearable, and sort of smear the picture that I had in my mind of stillness and all these concepts that I have gathered along my years of spirituality. But the process has been such that recently those intensity sensations that have been so regular and ruined the experience for me. What's been happening is that it is seen also as grace, as something that everything's okay. There's nothing that ruins the picture ultimately, and that's such a powerful thing to see how these super strong things on the surface also have a role in whatever story that I can attest to. It turns into a very emotional thing to see, because uh the story of of Rui was always uh painted by these surge and these intense times that contrasted to what I believe that should happen in along this search. And to see the process come to the point that also everything that happens is held in these magnificence, in whatever this is so beautiful to see.
Wow. I'm also reminded of our last chat when we were talking about the wobble. And I feel like over here things have been righted. And a lot mirroring what you're saying, there's just been more availability, an openness to everything, to just experience. And it's introduced a bit of lightness to things. Even when things are heavy, there's still a little light,
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the beautiful thing, is that I keep always saying to infuse these things with lightness. I really like the word infuse because to me it looks like the ultimate testament to what peace is, and not have peace as an ideal how the body should behave. Because as we said, it's uncontrollable. The tiniest thing the tiniest movement can you know make the body go a certain way, and there you're left to deal with it. So there's really no controlling factor, and this idea of peace and how it should manifest really, it's something that ultimately is another idea that dissipates.
I feel like that was such a great pointer that you gave me last time about that. That like maybe it's okay to not be okay. Maybe the body is feeling tense, and that's like there's the goal. As if there's not, the goal isn't to be at ease all the time. The goal is to be, and that, I feel like what you're saying has been the entry point into noticing that peace and the ease, and letting it all be. Not trying to not be okay. Or I don't know. It felt like a good invitation, to just not be so busy trying to fix things or change things or shift things. And it's been pretty good. Yeah. I've been working with Moldavite, which I have to talk about this because I'm excited about it. It's been really fun. It's a crystal. I got a piece for my birthday, and I've been telling everybody about it. So I guess you have no choice but to listen. And it's funny because it's like a high vibrational stone, and I had a piece that was on a pendulum, and the pendulum was designed that you could wear it like a necklace. So I was wearing it, and that week that I wore it was such a heavy week, and I didn't know. So I didn't know this about Moldavite. I'm just wearing this thing, and that week I don't know how to explain it. It feels like everything inside got just stirred up, like all of the thoughts, everything, and the feelings, just things that I was dealing with, they were just very visible. But the experience feels scouring, like I'm processing it because it won't go away. So you have to be available to all of this aspects that are just showing up, thoughts and stuff, and feelings and just stuff. I don't know how to explain it because it's not a old beliefs or just all of this just becomes very visible, and it was very painful. And then that week I got to the weekend, I took the necklace off just to trade it out for a different one, and I immediately felt so much lighter. And I was like, I hadn't made the connection, so that was the moment I made the connection, was when I put the other necklace on, and it felt like a woof. And I was like, oh gosh.
Wow.
And then I told Danny, I said, man, that Moldavite, man, I was wearing all week. He was like, yeah, I was surprised you were walking around with it the whole time. I guess he had already known, so he was familiar with the crystal. So he was like, I was surprised that you're wearing it every day, and I didn't know. So now that I have this piece, I've been working with it. And working with it is just sitting with it just getting it in your energy, being around it, looking at it. I meditate with it, and it's been like that. That was when the wobble we were talking about in the last one. That's when it started. And I only realized that retroactively. I'm in the wobble, so this wobble's just happening. And then, I feel off. And then I realized it started on my birthday when I was playing with the Moldavite. And so I've been still keeping with it because it has been bringing up a lot, but there's been it feels cleaning. Like I'm having no choice but to look at these thoughts, these beliefs, and they're just shedding. They're shedding as I'm just open to it. I don't even really think I can put it into words, but what I can say is Moldavite is the truth, man. it's been a cool thing to play with and add it into my practice.
Yeah.
So I'm a big advocate. I think everyone, if you like to work with energy, you should get a piece.
It seems like a teacher by itself. Like there's this whole thing about, in Zen and, all the Eastern traditions, there's like this aspect of the teacher in, making you do tasks and work, like farm work and art jobs and, shop wood, carry water, all that. And it seems that there's a component of, there's always like triggers, and this goes with the thematic that we've been talking about the body being uncontrollable, while there's the belief of it being controllable. And there's always this, there has been in traditions there always been this sense of provoking something that causes or instigates the contraction of me, or instigates patterns to come up. So it is very prominent to have this in a teacher student relationships, let's call it like that. And it's funny that stones can can do that job for you. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I to be honest myself, I've never experienced that because I just don't like I don't wear crystals or anything like that. I'm not knowledgeable in that regard, but in things that seem like exterior and provoke things to come up, I think, and this is a common thing I think for everyone, is people, dealing with people. So people are kind of my crystal. There's definitely a sense in relationships. There's definitely a sense of something being provoked, and what I notice is that the notion beneath that has always to do with my assumption, and my assumption is my relationship to others, and how I believe who I am, and when you behave that you are a certain thing, that's the whole thing is created. The relationship between you and yourself and others is created. So everything basically starts at this primal belief of who you believe you are, and from that all the suffering happens, and but also a lot of interesting things happen. It's not doom and gloom exclusively, but it's definitely an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, relationships are definitely yoga.
Mm.
I feel like that's it right there. Crystals are cool because they are I don't know how to explain that, but they're very of themselves. So their vibration, what they're about, it's I like to say it's crystallized in the sense that it's very shaped. It has a big form, and so you can tune into this. You have to get quiet to play with these. To tune into that energy because they're very shaped. I don't. Gosh, I'm not gonna be able to put words to this today, but people and relationships are definitely where I do a lot of my work because, there's just this. I mean, it's really far out, right? You're imagining the heck out of other and who they are and what's happening and who you are, and it's really it's a real good way to see where you're invested and who you believe yourself to be and who you believe everyone else to be, and have all of that explored. I was just out with some friends yesterday, and it was funny because at first I was like, going there, driving out there, I'm nervous. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm gonna be around my friends. I like to work with these guys, but I'm nervous, right? Like, how am I gonna do this? Like, how will I say the right things? How will I know? And then the answer just came, and it was like, you can trust yourself to be yourself. And I was like, yo, that's it. And so, it was really fun to just almost watch myself, because the words would just come up. I would just engage, and I'm talking, I'm moving around, I'm joking, and it's all just coming up. It's just happening.
I was gonna ask you, Brian, if you get angry at people driving or something like that.
It's funny. There was I was coming from In and Out a couple days ago. This was part of this is answering your question from earlier too, as far as the last few days. So I was coming back from In and Out, very happy because I have a 3x3 with extra sauce, raw onions. I mean, delicious. I'm a food person. And I'm sitting in traffic thinking about, oh my God, I can't wait to eat this. And it's buildup of traffic. It's like just after rush hour, and the light turns green. And so there's this lady behind me who's trying to get into the left turning lane because the left signal is green as well. But there's a long line of cars ahead of me. However, between my car and the car in front of me, there's a few feet I can scooch up. So I start scooching up. As soon as I start scooching up, the moment I start doing it, she blows the horn. Beep! And something there wasn't enough time to process from cheeseburger to her blowing the horn, and my foot slammed on the brake. Like, excuse me, I'm already moving forward. You're going to blow the horn trying to rush me. So then that escalated the situation, of course, and so she decided to lay on the horn. So here it is, just after rush hour traffic, a whole bunch of folks around, and she's laying on the horn for a good 30 seconds. Wow. And then finally, when traffic starts to move forward, she pulls up beside me, and all of these words are just spilling out of her mouth. And again, there was no room to process. I was simply sitting there, completely available to the experience, without there being a sense of, look at me, I'm available to this. There was simply the isness of what there was. And so the anger that used to be there, as far as folks triggering that sense of pride, that sense of importance, that sense of whatever it is, the residue, the habit can still express itself, but there isn't a tension to hold on to it. The availability of what there is what there is, despite what's going on, despite whatever the trigger happens to be. So I'm noticing with relationships and experiences and events like this, where there is a habit to be triggered, there's no longer the tension to hold on to the one who's been triggered. So there's the effect, and then it's done. You just move on. There's no holding on to it and building a storing around, oh my God, this just happened to me, because there is no me for it to happen to. There isn't that tense, that anxiety to protect the story. So yes, there was a moment where anger happened, but at the same time, the anger, there's a transparency to the anger. That's one of the words that I picked up. That's also in the last couple of days. Listen to one of your podcasts, either episode 60 or 19. The word transparency really stuck out. And there was, again, a transparency to the whole experience, without there even being labels or a description to the experience itself. Just what there was a transparency to it, which was completely natural, even though homegirl was, pissed about the whole thing. So, yeah.
Man, there's something about traffic. I'm not really affected. I'm certainly affected by some things, but that's definitely the subject that most people can speak about in terms of being angry. I can't really say that for myself, but it seems like a global phenomenon with trafficking. Do you get that, Brandon? Also,
Oh yeah, man. I was really listening to your story, and it was making me think of, very similar. Just in general, I'm very paying attention. So I feel there's moments where I'm feeling real zen, and traffic has a way, I sometimes find myself just cursing, and cursing is always really fun to me because I don't do it often. I think I'm not a cursor until I am suddenly, and traffic is a great place because you're just going along, and then somebody does something real mean or jerk, and then I feel it. I get engaged for a second. Yeah, like you said, I feel triggered, and I'm like, you MFing jerk. And it's funny. It's funny because it's very of the moment. I am very for a second I'm very irritated, and then I like to get all my words out, But I like what you said, transparency. What is in those moments I'm finding it's there, like you said, it does happen. I'm in a and I in the moment I feel sometimes if I'm really present, I almost have the choice. So the energy comes and I can lean into it, or I can back away from it, or I can do nothing. And then sometimes there's not any, it's very boom, it comes up and you're like, yeah, like the habit is activated. And I always feel I'm just in my car. I'm not gonna direct it at the person, really. I'm just talking to myself. I wouldn't. It's almost fun to be angry in that moment, and I feel like that comes from being the presence and the availability to it. It's fun almost to express it and just because I'm really a person in that moment. I'm really here, and it really happened to me, and I'm just in it. And for a second, it can be fun, but also it's to have that little bubble of I'm a zenned out and I'm just chilling, I'm just having, and then just suddenly I'm very human again. I'm very triggered, I'm very upset, and I lean into it for a little bit, and I let that energy come through.
That's interesting that you made the distinction between being a person and then being human. Because there is a difference. A person, that's the story. That's the memories and the habits all packed together in a nice little bun, and you serve it on a dish, it's warm, and that's the person. But human is very raw. It's the spontaneous expression of consciousness itself without the label of human or consciousness or whatever. It's simply blah. Babies, when they come out, they're just doing the whole thing, and there's no real rhythm to the dance. The rhythm is there; it's part of a cosmic rhythm, but relatively, there doesn't appear to be any rhythm to the thing. When we grow up and we're walking and we're talking, and there's all of this activity happening, the script is still running by itself. So these spontaneous expressions, whether it's anger or disappointment or happiness or excitement, whatever it is, all of that happening spontaneously is happening without the story of being a person. It's simply the humanity or consciousness of what there is expressing itself. And as long as there isn't an attachment to it, a gripping to it, which is a habit that eventually falls away, just like walking, there's no longer crawling. You walk, you don't crawl anymore. So there's no longer the habit once it starts to fall off to hold on to the story. When that habit falls away, there's nothing left to say. It's simply and it keeps going and going and going and going as that, without any tension to hold on to it to be a specific way, which is absolutely beautiful. But even to reflect on it as beautiful is holding on to it, modeling it as something that isn't spontaneously expressed.
I love the distinction.
Yes.
That's so cool.
I think about how cool it is to be a human sometimes, just to think about it. Like, if I can have the right mindset, I can zoom out, right? And it's just so cool that there's this thing that's thinking, that's that's pondering and feeling and tasting and loving and doing all these things, and it's just doing it by itself. Like when I'm not thinking, when I'm not invested in the person and the idea and the story, and I just can think of it as it's pretty far out, this whole thing is even happening, that there is a person and I'm moving around and these thoughts are just happening. there's no one controlling them. When I let go of that, and there's not this person that's doing it, I'm thinking, I'm, there's still that co-signing happening sometimes. But when I'm less invested in that, it's just funny. It's so funny that it's natural. Like a rock just sits there, water, it's moving around. Birds, they're doing their thing, and then here's this person, and they're in traffic, and they're upset. I'm looking. It's just crazy. No, I just been thinking about that, the human shape, and so then that births cities, and that births supermarkets, and that births all these like artificial, I would call them, but they're very natural because we made them, and we're nature, and that's just a ride to think about humans as nature. But a lot of we don't attribute. Sometimes I think there's this feeling where we don't attribute what we're doing as nature, like as if there's nature over there and it's doing its thing, and then there's us, and we're not that. We're no humans. We make cities and roads. Okay, so that's nature paving over itself. That's what it looks like. It can be.
I believe you're hinting at something that I've had sort of curiosity for that, which is when that aspect of memory and bringing mind into what's happening, when all that subdues, there's this freshness of experience, and it seems that, to pick up on the concept of beauty that Brian was speaking of, there's these, what I call beauty, in the sense that there's you merge into the experience completely, and these like this freshness of it seems like, to describe it would be like tasting or touching or seeing something for the first time. And I think that's really one of, at least to me, one of the testaments to, when you begin to be interested and investigate the experience. Something that really was blown out for me was this aspect of freshness in all experience. There was a teacher, there is a teacher, I can remember his name, but he went into a few interviews on a YouTube channel called Conscious TV, and he said that babies at, I think it was at 2 years old, begin to form the concept of self, and that's the point that the illusion becomes to solidify. And I can't remember exactly how he came to this conclusion, but he seems pretty legit to me. But I think he had some memories of being a baby or something, like in going into territory, But it seems to be that the process is the way that nature designs this, because we talk this as illusion, and as something that on the surface, when you hear it, it's it looks bad and seems bad, but it seems that by design, babies get to 2 years old, or whatever age he said, get to 2 years old, and there's the sense of self becomes to solidify, and it gave me time to think about that. And what I thought is that even the illusion and suffering, all that is sort of by design of by God's grace, or whatever you want to call it. So even this process of something that when it breaks seems so unthinkable, how could I live like that for years on end and never questioned it? All this process is also sort of embraced also by the magnificence of God. Let's call it like that.
You look at a flower that blossoms, and you see the flower. It's red, orange, whatever. And you think, wow, it's so beautiful. But the flower itself isn't thinking, wow, I'm so beautiful. And then you try to imagine, and you see a flower who begins to wilt. Some of the petals, they dry up, they turn brown. and it's death. I mean, obvious signs of death. This is the end. You can feel the sting of winter's frost. And a rose, a flower isn't thinking, oh my God, this is the end. I got to pack everything up. I got to get my things in order, sort my affairs, write my will. Because the flower understands it has a root, which is buried in darkness, buried in the unknown, buried in uncertainty, which is what is available to experience. What is available to isness itself. It's the uncertainty between thoughts. So the habit, the tension to hold on to thoughts as some sort of identity or some personal story, the natural peddling away of that includes the, oh my God, how amazing is it that this isn't that much of a thing, that I don't have to suffer anymore. That's part of the natural evolving, natural unfolding of this flower that has its root in uncertainty. All this apparent knowledge, all this apparent description, all this apparent attachment to concept is part of the root uncertainty expressing itself as something known. And the flower, of course, ends up going back into uncertainty, withdrawing from the experience, and goes to sleep again at night. Perhaps. I mean, that's, poeticizing the flower, which isn't necessary.
Yeah, I love that. I remember, actually, my last song about the Red Hood is all about that, because what gave rise to that song was I really like to photograph trees, like 5 years ago or something. I have a bunch of photos of trees and forests and all that, because there was this resonance to trees, because what came to mind was always this fact that trees were simply there and not complaining about extreme cold, extreme heat. They were just happy to be there. And I feel that resonates with what you have just said. And there was this really deep obsession with trees. And at that time, I recall perfectly that a bit of like with a Zen posture, I used to sit meditating, and I imagined myself as a tree, and how courageous they must be to endure through winters and be willing to simply stay there, happy and emanating whatever I felt at the time that they transmitted to me.
It's their nature.
Really,
I apologize. It's their nature to simply be. And then a breeze comes by, and they start to get tickled, and they start laughing in the breeze, and then they go back to just being there, just kind of relaxing. And
you're ready.
There's the Alan Watts brought up the idea that the planet is a planet that peoples in the same way that a tree, an apple tree, apples. So it's the same spontaneity of nature expressing itself, that people, whatever that idea is, that expression is, that collection, is naturally part of the total cosmic rhythm, which itself isn't a mobile rhythm, isn't a moving rhythm. It's very still, very absolute, without the word absolute, without the concept absolute, simply...
You guys are really that what you're saying. You're ready. That's how you do crystals. That's what it's all about. It's the exact same thing that you're talking about. How the tree is just there, and it has its own of itselfness. And then you think about the crystal and the time it took to form, how old these things are, and it has a very shape. I think about molecularly the way it's shaped. It's very formed, and it's very of itself. And so that's the energy you're tapping into, that you're looking at. It's how it's there. Just the same. It's the same thing. So you think about being a tree, you can think about being a rock, and you can think about being that crystal, and that is the universe coming on very strongly in this shape, and it's very here. And so that's what you tune into with the crystal, or you can tune into it with the tree. This is making me think about shamanism, which is all about that kind of stuff. about taking you're taking your consciousness and like you move it because it's all one thing, right? You move it from human to like you can actually move it down into the tree. You can be the tree for a second. You can be the stone, and you can actually do that with shamanism by moving the mind or the consciousness. I'm not really, so I have the understanding, but I don't know if I have it enough to say it, which is about the I always forget what they're called. The oversoul. There's oversouls for things. So like for cat. But like I have a cat, he's a cat, but there's an oversoul that is a cat, which is catness, and then he's an example of that cat energy in a particular form. And so, but there is a big cat that's just cat itself, and when what you do is with shamanism, there is you go to the oversoul of what cat is, and then you're there, and now you're a cat. You're not a particular cat. You're vibing with that energy. So that is the same thing for stones, for minerals, for crystals, for trees. There's a big, and it keeps going back. So there's a particular, so like there's a breed of that cat, and then you can go and get even more general of the catness.
Yeah.
You can see the cat. And the big cats or the little cats, you can just watch that cat expression. They have different behaviors, perhaps, but in some ways they're very cat. It's just one cat, and then there's where it branches out into the individuals, and then it gets more and more specific.
Yeah, there's that that meme of what's your spirit animal and all that. But in my experience with shamanism, which was specifically, it was going into 3 ayahuasca ceremonies. I mean, you can't escape the aspect of nature where this particular mixing of 2 plants got together. Like many people have experienced with snakes, or going into and living as if they were a big cat, a tiger, or anything. It seems that tradition in particular, there's a strong pull to experience life through the eyes of an animal or a mineral or whatever it is. It's very fascinating how that that kind of plant, not only the plant but the whole tradition revolves around in having nature as a doorway to as if it were pull you out of your body and teach you that essentially. I think that the teaching essentially is to tell you and to show that you are not your body. I think that's the ultimate thing, and that you can you don't really need the body to experience. And I think that should become clear, at least it is to me, that you can taste, you can hear, you can see, you can have the whole spectrum of experience in a dream while your body is essentially not functioning. You could argue that, yeah, you are alive, but all the phenomena appears not because that your physical senses are being activated, like physically, but that consciousness doesn't need a brain and doesn't need anything to create, right, and to manifest.
There's the idea that the physical form, this density, comes from consciousness in a sense, and this is looking at it in a modeled way where it's the absolute becomes awareness, becomes conscious, and so on. But it's going back to that uncertainty through the total expression, which is completely natural. But I wanted to back up a little bit. I apologize, Brian. You had mentioned the Oversoul. I think the book that's talked about is Seed of the Soul by Gary Zurkev or something like that, where he talks about. Does that sound familiar? No.
No,
okay.
No. Let me say, what is his name? Paul something. I have his book around. I learned from this guy here. He is Paul Francis. I learned from him. I took a class. He has a course. He talks about it, and that was my introduction into shamanism and things like that. But I know there's, he didn't invent it, so I know there's other people who talk about it. But I haven't heard that particular guy. What were you gonna say about it?
Oh yeah, I think that was I thought that was the book that you were referencing, Seed of the Soul, where he talks about the same thing, where there's an oversoul, so to speak, for birds as an example, and I had taken it into as far as a model, looking at it from the lens of the Matrix, where Neo is sitting down with the Oracle, and she says, "Look at the birds. There's a program that was designed to govern the birds." So that idea of an oversoul is a program that's designed to, but that's part of the natural order of things, baby growing up, flower blossoming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's coming out of the uncertainty, which I don't know why that keeps coming back. Uncertainty. It's the I don't know-ness of experience that allows it to be spontaneous, allows it to be free, allows it to be pure, allows it to be transparent. It's not holding on to the concept of what it can be, what it should be, what it was, or even what it is. It's simply...
This makes me think about being a pioneer. A lot of how we look at the world is so out there, and so we want to know about the world. We look out there, but isn't it pretty cool that you can look in here, and that's the world too? Because we can explore it both ways. So we can explore ourselves, and because we are the world, you can learn a lot about the world through inner exploration, as it is, as much as you can about learning about it externally. When you're looking out, you're in the thing you're trying to study, and so I think it's interesting to have a more inclusive exploration. Like a lot of what we're doing is kind of like we're trying to be objective. So we're trying to exclude the human lens in our exploration, which I think is funny because that's impossible, because our position and perspective is very human, and only a human's going to look at the world this way, period. So you cannot, in a sense, you cannot really escape that. But to go to that uncertainty, I'm reminded that, while I'm here, my death is my birthright. So that's a part of this whole experience, and that beginning, the moment I was born, I was going to die, and I'm going to at some point. Well, and that's pretty cool.
If there's an attachment to the idea of a body, and that specific expression, right. The models, every model ends up returning to silence in some way. Every thought by itself is a model. It's a string of words that's fit together as a model. So this particular concept, this image that appears in front of us, and we start to put words together, and all the things that we learn, and this is the story that's packaged, here's it is, this warm bun that's presented. If you're attached to the warm bun, when it starts to get cold sitting out there and it starts to rot, you start to think, oh my God. But it's the bun itself that's thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. Just like the rose example. The rose knows that it has a root in uncertainty. So when we start to take a survey of the world around us, and we have an understanding that that's a reflection of who we are, and we begin to withdraw attention to bring it back to a source, which is that uncertainty, without the label uncertainty. We bring it back. We come into the subtleness, or the subtlety of awareness itself, without the word awareness, simply. And this ineffable, expressive isness isn't dependent on any concepts, isn't dependent on any ideas, isn't dependent on any theories about what it is. It simply is as it is. And this actually goes back to, there was a laugh earlier, and I apologize for cutting you off with a laugh, but the reason why there was a laugh is because of the Diamond Sutra. And you talking about crystals matches exactly with the Diamond Sutra, because you talk about crystals being as they are. They're this shape, this molecular structure that's as it is, or Alan Watts would echo, of itself so. And the Diamond Sutra, there's one of the chapters in the Diamond Sutra where Subhuti is asking the Buddha, what should this discourse be named? And the Buddha says, call this the diamond of the perfect attainment of transcendental wisdom. I think that's how it goes. Where he's saying, basically, this is the Diamond Sutra. And the reason why it's called the diamond of the perfection of transcendental wisdom is because the diamond of perfection of transcendental wisdom is as it is, which is silence. Silence is transcendental wisdom, because you start with uncertainty, which is transcendental wisdom, silence, and then you end in silence. So silence is always transcending whatever happens to be. Now, if you catch that silence is before thought, memory, expectation, whatever the experience is, silence stands before it. If you see that silence is before whatever the experience is, you're before silence. So before silence, without the word, without the description, even silence, you're before that. It's beautiful.
Wow. Wow.
So now what?
Right. The more you're aware of that, the more that the more you're aware of that isness, that silence, the more that can become you become more, I don't know how to say that. The more you become an expression of it, the more that enters into your expression. Because as focused, I love this. As focused as received. That's what I've been playing with. And so, as you're focused is how you receive yourself. So as focused as received. So if you're focused, if you bring the focus to the silence, you receive it, and then what you're saying is all of that comes into play. So yes, there's the words, there's the thinking,
and this is yoga. Yoga is union. So then when we're sitting in traffic, and this is the example, sitting in traffic with the homegirl, blasting, the union, and this echoes what Rue was saying, when you're completely infused with the experience, there's no separation, non-duality. There's the complete immersion into the experience. That's union. That's yoga. That's what yoga is all about. So that's how we can have a yoga of crystals. That's how we can have a yoga of relationships. That's how we can have a yoga of meditation, a yoga of postures, a yoga of studying knowledge. Because all of these bring attention back into union. All of them bring the awareness into recognition of itself as awareness, as that perfect diamond, which simply is, without the story, without the concept, which shows up naturally within the availability of what is. But because I'm transparent to it, without needing to be transparent to it, naturally I'm transparent to it, it shows up, disappears, shows up, disappears, across the whole landscape of eternity, which has no effect on me because I'm aware of eternity as it is.
Beautiful. You guys were talking about Alan Watts, and I remember something that happened with me. Alan Watts was like the first teacher that I had. It was that teacher that YouTube recommended because it was so popular. It is so popular, along with Eckhart Tolle. And I was in the phase that I wanted to find a teacher that really knew the secret of this. And one thing about Alan Watts that really made me sad at the time, because I used to read the YouTube comments and all that. People were saying that, he was not legit because he was an alcoholic and he died.
Yes.
Essentially died because of that. And it made me so sad because at the time I felt like, how can someone enlightened be addicted to alcohol and essentially die and make all his students without a teacher and all that. And it was so disappointing to me to go through that. Do you have similar experiences in the sense of being disappointed with a teacher or a figure that in your mind is the holy grail of whatever you were looking for?
It was the same as far as Alan Watts, but by grace, I ran into Ram Dass almost immediately after running into Alan Watts. And Ram Dass seems to embody the message that whatever you do, it's okay. And I needed that to taper the aggressive idea of a father figure in my head of weighing down all this guilt, shame, all of that, carrying, again, a personal story, carrying all of that. So seeing somebody like an Alan Watts, oh, he was a drunk. Oh my God, I can't believe that this enlightened person is a drunk. But then you start to look at your collection of teachers, your library. Another example is Nisargadatta Maharaj, who was a chain smoker. There's footage of him just, cigarette after cigarette after cigarette. It's like, how is an enlightened person smoking cigarettes? And then you find out he died of throat cancer. It's like, oh my God. So it starts to throw doubt in the mind, this is BS, da, da, da.
Yeah.
But you can't stop. No matter what you do within the spiritual journey, what we describe as a spiritual, you can't stop. So it's the rose, again, yearning from the root of uncertainty towards the sun, naturally opening up and dissolving these buds of attachment to certain figures. And then once all the attachment to all the figures are let go, you realize that, oh, wait, there's one more figure that has to go, and that's me. That's the one who's been studying. That's the one who's been collecting. That's the one who's been going through all these realizations, because I realize now that every one of these realizations, they have a beginning and they have an end. So that means they're only memories. They're only memories happening within awareness, which is... And so when you get to this point where you're simply available to what there is, it doesn't matter what happens, because there isn't a tension to hold on to it. And I think it was actually Nisar Maharaj who said that it was an answer to somebody who asked him about, your smoking. He said, I don't have a problem with it. The body has a certain habit, so, whatever. It's not hurting anybody. And you find it does some cancer. It's like, did it hurt anybody? Maybe. But then also, Ramana Maharshi died from cancer. And then the question was, you're this guru, you're this holy man. Why don't you heal yourself? And he's like, why would I want to heal myself? So then that also goes into the shamanism and all the different toys that we can play with as awareness. You are suddenly thrust into the sandbox again, and it's all available, all the toys. But there's what's missing is the sense to reach out and grab it and say, this is going to give me happiness. This is going to give me confidence. This is going to give me truth. This is going to give me what I'm looking for, because you realize that you are that, reaching out to those things, grabbing them to play with. And so that what happens is they end up being played with automatically by themselves, naturally, whatever is in alignment with whatever you're doing. So then that goes on to figures like Osho, who it wasn't the drunkenness or the chain smoking or cancer, it was the idea that he was a pimp. He was a spiritual pimp selling people into sexual experiences. But even that's okay, because that's an expression of consciousness. And there's even a clip of him saying it, forgive me for being who I am, or something like that. He said, you wanted a guru, so I played the part, but forgive me. This is your dream. Forget that I even exist. So it's, again, reinforcing the idea that naturally we come through these things and we let them go. We come out of silence and we return. We come out of the uncertainty, we go back into it. That's the transcendental wisdom of the crystals, of the yoga, of the last couple of days, which has been quiet.
Wow. I'm a big Alan Watts fan. That was one of, like you said, the first. No one had ever spoken to me like that. That's how I felt when I was listening to him, because it's like, I felt like he's really speaking objectively. He's really telling it like it is. He's a great at. Alan Watts I like to think of he's a builder, and then he collapses it. So he'll set up all this structure, and he's like, look at this, look at that. Now check this out, and this is like this, and this is like this, and then he'll just pull it, and it all just falls apart. And then he laughs. He'll say something just right. Yeah. It's like so great.
But yeah,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll follow up next.
I was just gonna say, and so this is what I've been calling this a vibrational exploration. When you start to, what I've been finding is when you start to think about everything as energy and everything as vibration, then you can start to think of, you can start to kind of see that in the guru and the teacher. So Alan Watts is a vibration. He has a particular energy, and you can tune into that while listening to him, or you can tune into that energy. It's always available. If you just think of him, that's the same time. That's the same thing. So when you're imagining him, or when you're listening to him, and you have a feel for him when you're imagining him, you have a feel for him when you're listening to him. Those are the same thing. So then that's what you were talking about, the library of teachers. You have all the different gurus and stuff. You listen to them. They have an energy. It's a vibration. It's a particular, all we're ever doing essentially is translating vibration into knowing. And so you have the different teachers, they're vibrating at different frequencies. You can tune into them. You get a library of them. And then I think that's their wave. So sometimes I'll go out and about and I feel Ram Dass. I know what he feels like because I've listened to him and I've taken in his energy and I know what he feels like. And I can feel him as a teacher talking to me sometimes when I'm out and about doing life and there's Ram Dass laughing. He's telling me, that. Or sometimes it's a different energy. Maybe something about life has reminded me about Alan, and then he's present and his energy and he's vibing. And so you can tune into all of those things. And that's vibration. Let's do it again. There's crystals. You can think about that crystal. It has a particular shape and form. It's very here. It's very present. And then you can imagine that, and that's the same, that energy when you're looking at it, when you're thinking about it, when you're investigating it. If you close your eyes and you imagine it and you have that feeling again, it's the same thing. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I was trying to pull it all together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For me, that's the principle of of being essentially immersed with a teacher. Like when I'm reading Nisargadatta's book, I Am That. There's that field of being there with him, and when I was after YouTube videos of Muji or Rupert Spira, the most important thing that I can like, if I have to theorize in retrospective what I was looking for that communion and being there with them, not really what was said, but resting in their expression and their energetic field. That's what mattered to me, for sure.
I have a question now. How do you guys ever, what was I going to say? How do you feel about the Buddha's smile? I like to think about the Buddha's smile as my smile. And it's always present. The Buddha is always smiling at everything, whatever is happening. There's this, that's a frequency. That's an energy.
Absolutely.
You can tune into.
I think these things are like the mudras and certain postures and all that have such a if I have to put words into it, it's almost like a print on the Akashic Records, that have been like there, standing there for humanity to, or whatever sort of being, to have access to it and experience the energetic information that is there. So all these things also played a part, like the smile of the Buddha while sitting and actually smiling and accessing that kind of teaching, right, is in itself a transmission, and postures, body postures. My experience with all of that, it seems to be that there's an ineffable record throughout the times that these things can propel you into. So yeah, I have this image of the, like a shelf in the Akashic Records that you can grab, and okay, I'm gonna wear the Buddha smile now, and access how that feels, essentially how that feels without any conceptual understanding, but how that feels. I always play that with that kind of stuff, for sure.
I like the Akashic Records. Me and Danny, we joke about them all the time, about using them for like really mundane things. Like you could
I don't even know if I'm using the concept correctly, but
I think you are. Yeah, no, the informational field, the Akashic Records. We joke about using it crazy for, like, to know the weather, or you just reach into the records and then you just know stuff for very mundane things. But the funny thing about that, the Akashic Records, makes me think about having a conversation with existence, because so there's ways to access that information. You ask a question to yourself, the answer will appear. If you start to understand that the world's talking to you, you can listen. And so you can, when we talk about the Akashic Records and accessing that information, if you try to get it and it's best to let it come to you where you are, because you're a vibration, and it's best to let it come to you at a level of you can understand it, which means if you ask the questions, you can let the world inform you of the answer if you're looking, and it can come from a stranger. It could be a TV show. It could be the words for what you're asking. It could not even be words. It could be a situation that shows up in front of you, and it's the answer to your question. But you receive it at that level of contact where you meet the world, and that is one way. The other way is where a lot of people try to do is you try to meditate. So you try to reach this super high vibrational energy with your low vibration down here, and you like just get bits of it, right? It's like it's too big. You're not going to get that full picture. But if you ask and then wait, you can let life bring it to you, the answer, in a form it's where you are. So the transmission is at the level of your understanding, and it can come to you through the world, versus if you try to reach it with your mind and yourself through meditation. You can also access that kind of information by letting it come to you.
Absolutely. You just described the essence of inquire beautifully, and that's I think, and I certainly can attest to that. That was the difficulty when first coming across these teachings of Ramana Maharshi, questioning who am I. That sort of practice at first, there's no way to, at least for me, to intuitively have figured it out, because what I was expecting to happen was that there was some sort of intellectual answer, in despite of hearing that it was not the mind that was going to answer and all that, but that was all I knew, right? That was the way that I believe that experience was formed, was that there was me here, there was a world out there, and there was this apparent distinction between point one and point two. So these to come into what you were talking about, receiving the answer instead of creating one, it was such a struggle for me, because I was, there was an intuitive sense that what was proposed made sense, but it created, I would say that it created even more suffering, because the contraction tried to figure out, and that instigates the contraction to contract even more. And at the time I felt miserable, because here I am, in this super noble search of whatever I'm searching for, and I'm feeling even worse, even more unease and compulsive, and trying to figure things out. There was definitely this phase of the promise that this is the end of suffering, this will lead you to great accomplishments and all that, were completely sidetracked and provoke the opposite.
If you pour rubbing alcohol on an open wound, it's going to sting. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter how many towels you bite on or what. It's going to sting. That's just what it does. So mantras, mudras, whatever the practices are that have been ingrained in consciousness somehow. It's one consciousness. So whether we call it the Akashic Records or I like the phrase that you use, the something information, something you said, information grid or something. So whatever we name it, it's one consciousness. So it's one memory complex. That's doing the whole thing. We see it in a very material sense with sports. If somebody breaks a record, all of a sudden people are breaking that record now, and then there's a new record set. So that's the impression that's made on consciousness. But it's going to sting when you start to use the tools that uncover the bullshit. The bullshit starts to say, "Wait, no! What you taking the covers off me for, man? I'm chilling. What are you doing?" And so you keep on going with the practice because it's a natural thing. Even to stumble across any of this as a language, as an interest, as a curiosity, even the tiniest grain is pre-scripted within the fabric of consciousness, within the nature, within the information grid or whatever you said. It's all itself expressing itself. And I keep going back to this, I apologize, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. But it's what there is. It's the uncertainty expressing itself and then returning back to that, I don't know. I don't know. Yes. And so that when you start to uncover that I don't know-ness, there's a clinging, habitually, a clinging to protect that I don't know-ness, that ignorance. But the ignorance is what you want. That's what you're looking for. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking for questions.
Absolutely.
Or looking through questions.
Yeah, I think that, that component of suffering that is so present, like in Buddhism, right? It's like one of their core teachings and premises, and also Christianity, every religion really, but there's definitely that central point of suffering, and I think that's from when I began to at first talk about this and my interest in Eastern religion and all that with other people, I sensed a contraction when it came to the fact of suffering. And I think that's something that's, you can't deny it, but it is a subject that people are essentially afraid of, right? I always sensed that I got to the point where at first I was super clear that, yeah, I'm suffering. And Buddhism helped me on that because it's one of their core teachings. But when I tried to explain why I was so interested in these things to other people, when I communicated that, yeah, you must admit that you were suffering. Maybe it was not skillful on my part, but it was always this point of friction when people heard what I had to say at the time. So my question for you guys is that, do you think there's this need or it is useful in your history of seeking to come to the point of admitting that one is suffering?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would use the word suffering. Tension, attachment, obsession, anxiety, fear, doubt, all of that. I would say that there within the journey there would have to be honesty to actually look at your direct experience and be completely honest with you. And there's layers to that honesty. I mean, initially, like you were saying earlier, when you started to read Who Am I, it didn't really make sense in an experiential way. There is a logical expectation. So there is an apparent process to come from the dense I am this body to gradually returning to the root, which is non-conceptual, ineffable, and so on. So within that process, if there is a sense, I am this person, I am this someone, use that sense to then be honest about what that person is encountering. And that looks like self-help and that sort of thing. And that's actually where I like Adyashanti, because he seems to be sitting at the intersection of both self-help and non-duality or sincere spirituality. Sitting right there. It's a very, very thin thread between self-help and non-duality, because if you lean too far into self-help, you end up gravitating and attaching to the person. If you lean too far into non-duality as a concept, then you end up being immature because you're doing the whole spiritual bypassing thing. So Adyashanti sits in that lineage of teaching, which is sort of a bodhisattva, I guess, is sitting right there at the thread between the two worlds. Sitting right there on the thread, which is I, the word I, that thought sitting right on the thread and saying, no, look this way. No, look this way. No, look this way. And so gradually there's some stabilization where that I, that little slither disappears. And then there's yoga, there's union, which is what has always been. But then in order to get that place where you say, oh, this is what has always been, you have to go through, what is this?
I
Which is
love
so
that.
stupid. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, if you go too far to the self-help side, there's these rigidity of the self becomes even more so. And that's also, mm, another, I guess, unpopular opinion among many people across spiritual circles, but I also completely agree with that. And I can really tell how to engage with that type of encounter, because it's something so that people care about so much, right? They care about their therapists, and I can see perfectly why. Because when I'm speaking to Brandon, as I do every week, it's sort of a therapy to me. There's this communion and this encounter of people that meet in honesty. So I can see perfectly why people have such. I'm gonna say attachment, but I don't mean that in a bad light, but more like that see value in it. So I'm just telling my experience on that. I can really, I always feel that it's such a tender and subtle object to, say outright that, okay, therapy is, if you're really finding wanting to find the juice of all this, I think, you have to be careful not to lay too much on that side, and keep, keep it in the middle way, as you were mentioning with
Yeah,
Arishanti.
you'll get stuck. Like if you, and it does go both ways. So if you go too far into self help, then you're the self help becomes the thing, right? You get latched onto the idea of self help, and then you're functioning in such a way that you're approaching yourself in a way to fix yourself, right? So then you're going to be met with all of your problems all the time if you lean
Yeah,
too
and
far
there
into
the
that.
thing is that there's a palpable improvement, right?
Yes,
Because the character, the history, the story of the character can definitely be improved. There's no
yes,
denying in that, and there's no denying that chronologically you can attest to that. I'm much better off now than I was 2 years ago when I started therapy. So it's very tricky to peel the layers and talk about that.
yep. And if you do the non-dual thing, if you lean too far into that, and then you become non-dual becomes a thing,
Yeah,
and now
which can happen too.
you
Yeah,
yes, you can cling to that. Now you're stuck in non-dualism. So like the middle way is, I would say ideal in my opinion, than to
hmm,
be uh invested, because the middle way is what is. It's you. There you are, and now and then you're into non-dualism,
yeah.
and then you're into self-help, uh or then you there you are again. You can go either way,
Yeah,
either
I
or.
like to talk of these things because you know, going back to relationships and all that, it's always a point of friction for me when these things come. And, to talk about, come again to the concept of infusing anything that appears with truth, it also doesn't feel very true to me to, or the way that I'm still trying to find a way to transmit what I really think to people without, hurting them or causing unnecessary um friction. And this is definitely a subject that comes up often, people telling me that, oh, how their therapy is going. And you know I certainly have an opinion about it from what they tell me, and I would like to give my view on that. But sometimes I know that it seems that I'm gonna say things that might not be useful for them. So I ask myself, why should I say them, and this aspect of relationships has been a fun thing going on, and that I'm still trying to navigate in a, in a skillful way, whatever that means.
The cool thing about relationships, because people are so volatile and changeful and inconsistent, and I'm saying the same thing, but you get the point. Because of that, there's so much opportunity for friction, and there's so much opportunity to be honest about who you actually are, which is to say that maybe you're not the good person in specific situations. Maybe you're the asshole. And you have to be okay with allowing that expressing itself.
Yeah.
Just let the asshole show up. And then what's noticed is just like with Ramana Maharshi with cancer, or Alan Watts with drunkenness, or Maharaj with the chain smoking, it's okay. It's fine. It's going to happen anyway. This is one of the things I loved about the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is talking to Arjuna. Arjuna is this warrior. That's who he is. He fights. That's all he does. He fights. He wakes up, he starts fighting, he goes to sleep. He's dreaming about fighting. All he does is fights. So now he's on the battlefield, about to fight, and he goes to Krishna. He says, I don't want to do it. And Krishna's like, dude, this is what you do. This is who you are. You don't have a choice. It's your nature. What's resistance going to do but cause suffering? So suffering is only resisting resisting the natural spontaneity. And if the natural spontaneity is you pissing somebody off, well, there it is. And there it happens. And then it's done.
I love that.
It arises, and then it goes right back into uncertainty, right back into silence. And that's the diamond of transcendental wisdom. That's the diamond of silence. That's what we meditate on. That's our yoga. Our crystal is...
Man, I love that. That was definitely something very useful to hear.
So when we're in these friction moments with relationships, when it starts to bubble up from the surface, the mud is really doing its thing, that's when we shift attention to the transparency, which is natural. We shift attention to the awareness, which is natural. It's already here, available to whatever is happening. So there doesn't have to be this tension of, I gotta be available, I gotta be available, I gotta be available. Because what's naturally available to the thought, I gotta be available is already there. It's already here now. So there's no effort involved with it. It's effortless. Effortless being. Effortless silence, effortless stillness.
If you read, I was reminded we were talking. If you remove your attachment to outcome, that's how you're most effective. So then, what you're saying, right? You might agitate people, okay? That's okay, and then you let that, and then you don't. You might have this attachment because you have an idea of what help would look like. You're like, oh yeah, they'll feel better, and that's the help. Yeah. But when you let go of that attachment and you let your force be of itself, you might rattle them. But then if you're free of attachment to what your healing looks like, you can let them be healed. It might take over time. Maybe what you say is the seed that maybe days later it comes back to, and it opens later, and they're like, oh yeah,
absolutely,
you know. If you can just release that's part of Reiki. So if you release your attachment to the outcome, you just want to help. Okay, that's enough. And then you speak as one who wishes to help, and you speak your truth. You be as honest as you can, and you speak from your heart and with your intention, and that's what's transmitted. And the words they don't really matter anyway. Where it's about the intention. That's the vibration. That's the energy. That's what shapes the words. That's what shapes their delivery and when they come out, and the timing and all those fun factors.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you're talking about stuff I really am interested in. So I love thinking about transmission and sending signals. And if I can just talk about this really quickly, because I'm going to forget. When you were talking about this being one mind, it's really fun. When you get with that idea about it being one consciousness, you can start to see. I start to envision that it's like a node, and we're all just nodes processing. And so sometimes I notice I have a question, and what's this question in me, even if I don't ask it, will prompt people to just it's almost like they come and they just sing. They just be, why? What made you come to me? And sometimes I ask, what made you say that to me? Because sometimes people will just say exactly what I needed to hear, or I've had questions I've been thinking, especially in these circles. I've had questions I've been thinking. I've had them come up in the chat. We have a chat we're in. People will just start talking about whatever it is that I was thinking about. I didn't say anything. They just start talking about it, and I'm like, there it is. And so then I start to think these questions aren't even necessarily my questions. It's the question of the moment right now, and and everyone's thinking about it in their own way, and it'll just come.
It's a wink of the universe.
Oh my gosh, yes, synchronicities. The winks they come through all the time. And so when you start playing with that, I think about you can, it's kind of like magnets. You can draw things out of people if you do that. So you can draw answers, you can draw the best out of people if you hold them in your heart as you try to see a good thing of them. That's what you'll pull out of them, and they'll have no choice. It'll just come right out just like that. But it goes the other way around too. So if you think that person, oh, you're such an asshole, well, guess what? You're gonna draw the asshole out of them, and they're gonna give it to you.
I love assholes, by
the way. Yeah. For me, my spiritual path has brought this exploration, this inquiry has brought a reinvigoration, a zest for life as it is. And so then, yes, even the assholes are delightful. And someone's yelling, and I'm triggered. If I can look at it just right, it's pretty funny. Because in order for me to get mad about this, I got to be really invested in who I am in that moment. And so then, woo, he got me, and I am really upset. I'm so mad. That can be such a rush. It goes all the way around. So being sad, mad, happy, all of those things are really invested in that moment.
I was gonna say I've been pretty drawn to people that would be cataloged as assholes. I think if I have to say why, is because there's some assholes have in them an innate honesty, I think, that don't have the necessity to play by the book, and that aspect of spontaneity is obvious in them, and I guess that's why I've been drawn to them, and it's really fun. I must admit that it's really fun to see, when people get triggered by that. It's marvelous to me, I must admit, and by that token, I guess I'm an asshole too.
But I mean, when you mention the honesty thing, you have to be an asshole in order to be honest. Even if you're simply an asshole to yourself, you have to be, because you have to call yourself out on your bullshit.
Absolutely.
And if you don't call yourself out on it, then it continues to play and play and play and play, which is natural. So you're eventually going to call yourself out on it anyway. Or what happens is life brings a situation to draw that bullshit out. And so you're unwittingly just kind of surrender to the thing anyway. And what really happens when that thread of an idea of separation between inner and outer, this is kind of echoing what Brianel was saying, when that thread dissolves between inner and outer, where there isn't a distinction anymore, there isn't a separation between the two, when there is yoga, everything is teaching itself. It's all one teacher, one student, teaching itself about how to love itself, how to accept itself, how to be itself as this, whatever this appears to be.
Love it. Yep. We are at 1:30, 1 hour and 30. I guess it would be a good ending point.
Yeah, this is cool. Time flies when you're not in it.